This is Dr. Laski. I just thought that I would put together a short video on the use of Blackboard for those of us that are now tossed into this because of the coronavirus or COVID-19, and we may not be entirely familiar with Blackboard. So let's start with the idea that when we go to start Blackboard, obviously if we look up here, we can see that we're simply plugging in to the URL the idea of blackboard.njcu.edu. When we do that, we should come up with this page, which is the new login page. And if we go down here to login with GothicNet ID, so you will need to have your Gothic ID. If we hit that, it brings up the idea of Gothic ID. So the very first thing that we're going to have to do is plug in our ID, in my case J. Laski, and then it's going to ask for our password. And if we hit login, we should come up with a page that looks something similar to this. Now, obviously, mine is going to have many courses and so forth, so we're not interested in all of that. I'm simply going to pick on a course that we are using this semester. So if I just go down to the bottom here, because it's easier this way, and I'm going to pick on, let's do the innovation class. You'll see it says Management 711, the section number, Managing Internal Innovation, Spring 2020. And if I click on that, it brings us to the course. Now, as far as getting around, there are a couple of things that we're interested in. All the way to the left, we'll see a content section. There's a syllabus section, discussion board, messages, and some other things. Above that is an announcement section. And for those of you that have been taking this course with me in class, you probably have at least looked at the announcements and or the messages. So I'm going to start very simply with not the announcements or messages section, but the content section first. This is the area where I put the syllabus, and if you hit contents, you'll see the syllabus is here. We had a couple of cases we were working with, Medtronic being one, FedEx being another, Blue Ocean Strategy being another, and then I also put something in there on APA 6th because we did have the idea that, well, if we have to do a paper, it's got to conform to the School of Business standard, which although there is a 7th edition of APA available, APA 6th is the current standard. So again, just maneuvering a little bit. Syllabus we've already looked at, but if we were going to look at syllabus, I'd click on that. And it asks, well, what do you want? I'm using Firefox. You use whatever you feel you need to use. And open with what? Well, I'm going to open it with Word. And hopefully, if this all goes well, it'll pop open here in a minute. All right, you now see the syllabus, and again, we've been through this because we've gotten through half a semester, so I'm not going to do a whole lot with this, but you would simply page down, print whatever it happens to be. I'm going to close out of this. I'm going to go over to the announcements section. Normally, when there is an announcement, you are notified of the announcement through your NJCU email. And I've posted a few things during the course of the semester, so I'll just go down and start with the first couple of things that I wanted us to be aware of. One was this Plan B, because a week or so ago we weren't certain that we were going to be going to fully online. Obviously, what everyone is calling a pandemic now, has had an impact on gatherings, which includes higher ed. So there's that announcement. I did update some things on March 9th on the final deliverable, and this is really in sharing with each other, given the context of, this not meeting in person, having to revert to online and so forth. So final deliverable, and again, looking at the announcement, what I'd like us to do is to start the groups interacting with each other via email, perhaps internet in some other form, like Zoom is a great way. Skype is another way, and so forth. So you'll read the announcement and it'll give you some perspective on that. And I will be putting up some additional videos, and I'll send you the links on those, and we'll talk about that. But that's basically announcements. The other area that we need to concentrate on, and again on the left, we look at messages. And this is where I also sometimes get your messages, although I have suggested that you email everything to me using my NJCU email and or my Gmail, all of which is on the syllabus. But if I were to go to the inbox, for example, typically there would be, Sean sent me something which I note that I have not, opened and looked at yet here. But again, get something here. I would typically reply, although it's quicker, through my NJCU email and or Gmail. All right, so that's messages. Discussion board. Discussion board is something that we are going to start to use for the rest of the semester. And what's going to happen is I'm going to create a forum, and in this forum I'm going to suggest a couple of things, and everyone in the class is expected to sign in and to respond on the discussion board here with your feedback to what I suggest or what I propose. It is up to each other member to respond to me and or other members. Those can be it's the idea of being interactive. So it's not that we're going to be overly critical of what our peers suggest or the way they respond. I always try to look at the positives here because, again, learning is an iterative process, and we are indeed in part trying to learn from each other. So whether you're doing the innovation class or you're doing one of my other classes, the discussion board is an area for us to show participation in an online kind of forum, and also to demonstrate, without me having to resort to quizzes and things like that we've actually studied the material, we've read the cases, and we've gotten something out of all of that. So here again, I'm going to propose something. I would appreciate if the responses are more objective rather than subjective. And what I mean by that is, here is where you're going to source your replies. I'm not hugely interested in personal opinions most of the time. So, for example, in terms of innovation, I might suggest something that says, well, innovation is the result of trying to solve a problem. If there's no problem, then there's really no drive for anybody to innovate anything. Now, we know thus far into the semester in this course that that's not necessarily the case. So you would reply to that, but I'm not interested in, well, I feel that, or I don't accept that as, an underlying premise. I'd rather have you refer back to the cases, to the materials that we're using in the class, to a particular text or book or reading, or in some way we've researched our reply, and we can answer the question, says who? So when I put something out there and you respond, think of me standing behind you, whispering in your ear saying, says who? In other words, where'd you get this from? Is this something you just kind of divined in the middle of the night, or something that came to you? Or is there a legitimate, whatever that might mean, but legitimate source that allows you to make the claim that you're making, or a counterclaim or something like that? So in other words, let's be objective about this. But the discussion board we're going to have to rely on, because that is going to be our substitute for in-class participation. Now, we may try a Zoom event, but we'll see how that all comes together. Technology is somewhat an issue sometimes, and we can't all meet at the same time, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to rely on the discussion board to a great extent. In any event, so this is your basic navigation for Blackboard, and those are the key things you will need for my class. Now, as far as the other stuff, and again, this is a faculty page, but grades, I am not this semester posting grades on Blackboard. As far as research materials and adopt-a-course materials, particularly for the grad students, I've avoided adopting a particular textbook because I think there are some other resources available to us that A, are cheaper, and B, are more timely and allow us to get into areas that we're particularly interested in. And then, it goes on and on. There's a syllabus template. There's a bunch of things. So your navigation on Blackboard may be slightly different from mine, but these key areas will be substantially the same, and these are the areas you need to rely on. So again, where it says syllabus, you will likely not find my syllabus. You will find my syllabus and other things in the content section. You're going to be interested in the announcements. You're going to be interested in the messages,